Holy Schmidt, it's A10 tournament time. In a matter of hours, the St. Bonaventure Bonnies will tip off against the Richmond Spiders. SBU-TV's Sean Mickey packs his bags and heads to Washington, D.C. to bring you live coverage throughout the weekend. A second nor'easter hits the East Coast this week, knocking down power lines and leaving one woman dead in New York. Good morning. Thanks for joining us on this Friday. I'm Erin Lanahan.
And I'm Emily Weber. Let's get straight to today's news. The Atlantic 10 tournament is underway. SBU-TV's Sean Mickey is in D.C. bringing you all-access coverage. Our Maya Capolino tells you what to expect this weekend from Sean.
Oh hey, I'm Sean Mickey with SBU-TV, and I'm headed to DC to cover your Bonnies as they play in the Atlantic 10 tournament this week. Currently, I'm getting ready to head down so I can give you your all-access pass to Bonnies basketball.
Year as well, so I'm happy. This is why we're such a great team this year.
I spoke with Tom McCarthy and Chris Ekimoff, the alumni chapter representatives of the DC area.
Because of DC's location, I think, being right in the mid-Atlantic, it allows folks from Philadelphia, from New York, really all along the East Coast, that 95 corridor, to come in easily.
Chris informs us where the organized pregame spot is for the Bonnie fan.
Sorry about those technical issues. Be sure to stay updated. Follow SBU TV on all our social media platforms listed here on your screen.
Before leaving for the A10 tournament in D.C., our Sean Mickey spoke with two of the Bonnies' team leaders to discuss their expectations.
And in 2016, we got comfortable, we got bit for it, so we just refused to let that happen again.
In 2016, the Bonnies were 22-7 going into the A10 tournament. A first-round loss put their fate in the hands of the NCAA selection committee. St. Bonaventure was not selected to go to the big dance in a move some fans would say was the biggest snub in NCAA history. The Bonnies know the only way to seal their fate is to win all 3 games.
Yeah, I think it motivates everybody. We simply just don't want to be on the losing end.
The Bonnies will take on the Richmond Spider Monkeys tonight at 6 p.m. in the Atlantic 10 quarterfinals.
Our only goal right now is to take care of Friday, and just keep chopping wood, like Smith says.
Sean Mickey, SBU TV.
We thought we were in 2016.
New this week, a double whammy as the second nor'easter hits the East Coast. This nor'easter brought heavy winds and snow, knocking down trees and power lines and leaving hundreds of thousands of customers in the dark.
From last weekend's deadly storm, Wednesday's nor'easter brought a second deadly onslaught. A woman in New York State was killed by a falling tree. Trees have fallen across the region from the weight of the snow. Cars have been covered until they were unrecognizable lumps in the bitter cold. Power lines have fallen, some sparking fires, and some of this snow has accompanied thunder and lightning. While this system is mostly past, New England will still get wind and residual snowfall through Friday. For a region still reeling from last weekend's deadly storm, Wednesday's nor'easter brought a second deadly onslaught. A woman in New York State was killed by a falling tree. Trees have fallen across the region from the weight of the snow. Cars have been covered until they were unrecognizable lumps in the bitter cold. Power lines have fallen, some sparking fires, and some of this snow has accompanied thunder and lightning. While this system is mostly past, New England will still get wind and residual snowfall through Friday.
One death has been attributed to the storm. Barbara Selesky died in New York after a tree fell and struck her. But still, this nor'easter's devastation does not beat last week's storm. President Donald Trump agreed yesterday to meet with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un by May after Jong-un pledged to stop further nuclear tests and move towards denuclearization. South Korean National Security Advisor Chung Ho-young said that in recent talks with the dictator, Kim Jong-un wanted to meet President Trump as soon as possible. After the meeting comes after Trump called Jong-un Little Rocket Man, to which Jong-un replied Trump was a mentally deranged dotard and threatened to rain nuclear fire on the West.
Mocking March Madness, Pauline Hoffman created a women's bracket to honor influential women in history. SBU-TV's Fraser Breon has the story.
With Women's History Month upon us, Pauline Hoffman and other committee members chose 64 influential women in history to vote on, recognizing the accomplishments of those women along the way.
So we thought, you know what, it'd be a lot of fun to do something like this because it's almost game-like, but at the same time you're learning and we're teaching people about different women and getting the campus involved in a way that maybe they're not normally. So once we had our categories, then it was, who are the women? And I don't think anybody on the committee was afraid we wouldn't get enough.
You can read the bios and vote on their website to influence who will make it into the Elite 8. Results will be announced March 15th. I'm Fraser Breon, SBU-TV.
Vote, 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 vote.
You can find the link to the website posted on our Facebook page where you can vote on who you think the most remarkable woman in history is.
President Donald Trump signed orders imposing new tariffs on aluminum and steel imports yesterday in the midst of a heated controversy on trade penalties. But in the order details, Trump offered a more flexible plan than originally envisioned.
American steel and aluminum workers signing tariffs international allies and Hill Republicans have warned against. The tariffs will go into effect in 15 days, adding 25% to the cost of U.S. steel imports and 10% to aluminum. Trump said the tariffs won't immediately include Canada or Mexico pending NAFTA negotiations and indicated other flexibility.
We apologize again for the technical issues. We should have these fixed by next week. The United States is the largest steel importer in the world. President Trump tweeted Monday, "To protect our country, we must protect American steel. # America First."
The snowstorm that hit this past week did not only affect St. Bonaventure students, but members of the surrounding communities. SBU-TV's Nick Gallo and I went to see just how the state of emergency affected them. Even though students were on break last week, the snow was not. While many were away on vacation, winter weather occupied St. Bonaventure and several students felt the effects of it. Freshman Natalie Forster, resident of 3rd Falconio, explains how she found a leaky hole in her ceiling when she got back from break.
It started, but they assume it's because of the snow and the weather that's been pretty rough, so the leak was definitely for at least 2 days.
But the storm didn't just hit students. Former St. Bonaventure professor Paul Whelan told us how it impacted him as well.
Yes, we still are, but we lost power from Thursday till Sunday night. We do have a generator which we put in years ago, so we were able to get half of the house powered up. So actually that meant that the furnace could work and we had water out of the well, and the snow was so heavy and wet that it fell on top of our very tall pine trees, and they're 4 or 5 stories tall, the trees, and they just toppled over, pulled right out of the ground, most of them. They didn't break off, they pulled off. One of our neighbors came in, unbeckoned. He just came down the road with his son with power saws and cut his way through up our driveway, and just did it to be a good neighbor. One of the nice things about living in the country, in the boonies, is that people tend to sort of look out for each other.
So how was it handled? Salamanca Mayor Michael Smith explained how they overcame the challenges as a community.
We had no traffic control, we had no street lights, we had unplowed streets, we had hot wires down, we had no ability to respond to emergencies. We couldn't get to people, they were treed in.
Winter weather continues to hit us in Western New York as I am here at a home in Great Valley where about 25 trees have literally been uprooted from the ground. Residents continue to feel the effects of Winter Storm Quinn as there have been recent reports of widespread thundersnow throughout all of New York State and eastern Pennsylvania. We advise you to be cautious when driving and stay safe. Reporting from SBU-TV, I'm Emily Weber. Be sure to have your shovels handy as the Buffalo News predicts snow will continue to fall over the course of the weekend.
It's a nearly $4 million cut in state library funding. How will Governor Andrew Cuomo's recent budget proposal impact your local library? SBU-TV's Bryce Spadafora and Mariah Marrero have more.
In his 2018-2019 budget, Governor Andrew Cuomo proposed a 4% cut to state library aid.
I caught up with Director of the Olean Public Library, Michelle Lavoie. She told me a 4% budget cut isn't new.
He does this every year. So there's no surprise. What libraries feel like is a political football. We're such a tiny portion of the state budget that it makes no sense.
Lavoie said that her and other librarians head to Albany every year to petition for higher budgets.
Sometimes they will feel strongly enough that they'll put a little bit of extra money into the budget so it actually gets us above flat funding. And then other times we just have flat funding year after year. So we're basically at this point, I believe, if these cuts were to be maintained, we would be operating at 2000 year funding levels.
SBU-TV reached out to Cuomo and a U.S. representative about the cut.
I reached out to Governor Andrew Cuomo and U.S. Representative Tom Reed on their thoughts about the 4% budget cut, but have not heard back yet.
According to Lavoie, money invested in the library pays off for the community.
For every dollar invested in the library that is spent in your tax dollars on the library, if you use it, you're getting an average of $7 back. If you're a heavy user, you're getting more.
Lavoie says people who feel strongly about the subject should reach out to their local representatives.
You know, I hope people, if they care, will reach out to their representatives in support of their local libraries, because this is every year we're facing these threatened cuts.
Bryce Spadafora and Mariah Marrero, SBU-TV.
SBU-TV will keep you updated on our social media and if we hear back from Governor Cuomo or Representative Reed.
This week, Governor Andrew Cuomo announced a $5 million grant for the animal shelters across the state. Cattaraugus County SPCA is one of the 14 animal shelters receiving funds from the grant. SPCA staff member Clarice Schwanz explained the action plan for the adoption center.
We are all super excited.
Excited and grateful for receiving a total of $164,436. The grant provides the adoption center for renovations to the heating and cooling system.
Adding a new heat, well, it's going to be a new heat system for the shelter. Right now, the heat, isn't too amazing. From what I understand, it's going to be like a natural gas too, where what we have right now is more outdated.
Schwanz also explains how the ventilation system will provide a healthier environment for the animals.
New ventilation coming in, so that's going to help with controlling disease throughout the shelter. Right now, we don't really have a whole lot of airway in a lot of the rooms that we have.
SPCA is looking forward to renovate the environment inside. Therefore, the grant gives the center a chance to fix these issues.
So that way when they come in, it just looks happier, it looks cleaner. Right now, things are so old and dingy that it just almost looks dirty, even if it's not dirty, because it's just been here so long.
Governor Cuomo granted 13 other animal shelters across the state, and those animal shelters, including the Cattaraugus County SPCA, have been funded in order to improve the health and safety of animals. Reporting for SBTV, I'm Jocelyn Person.
Cattaraugus County SPCA is currently taking calls from companies who will work on the renovations inside the center.
6 months ago, Hurricane Harvey rocked Texas, leaving citizens in turmoil and over $125 billion in damages. This past week, members of Bono Responds gave up spring break to provide relief to locals still being affected by the aftermath of the storm. SBU-TV's Matt Williams shares their impactful experiences with you.
Spring break, a time for students to set all their worries aside and enjoy a well-needed vacation for school. But while most students took this time to relax, Bono Responds had a different calling. Last week, a group of students traveled to Houston, Texas to provide relief for local residents majorly affected by Hurricane Harvey. Teaming up with local organizations, Bono Responds answered the call by building shelters, cleaning out impoverished areas, and constructing ramps for those who are in need of wheelchair accessibility. I spoke with dedicated Bono Responds member Jeff Kaminsky on what his recent experience in Houston meant to him.
And I think just to go down there and actually experience it and see it for myself was really powerful, and it was really going to resonate with me for a while. Having changed dozens of lives while in Houston, the group is back on campus planning their next major service project. After speaking with President of Bono Responds, Yvonne Garman, they plan to take another trip to Houston in May to provide additional service to the state of Texas. But while not taking on major service projects, they'll attack local projects such as partnering with the Warming House, providing transportation to those in need, and simply connecting with locals on a personal level. To find out more about Bono Responds, or if you'd like to volunteer with them, visit their website at www.bonoresponds.org. Reporting live, Matt Williams, SBU-TV.
Bono Responds is looking for more new members. For more information, visit bonoresponds.org.
In 1219, St. Francis of Assisi risked his life and crossed crusade lines to meet Egypt's Sultan. SBU's very own Father Michael Calabria is among several scholars who provided input on the PBS documentary The Sultan and the Saint. Rob Barbieri reports.
The Sultan and the Saint tells one of the great lost stories from our history. Set during the terrible times of the Crusade, it speaks with urgency to our present. Our very own Islamic Studies professor, Father Michael Calabria, provided input on the film.
It presents a story, a true story, of two individuals from very different cultures, from different religions, who are able to transcend those differences in a time of war and see one another simply as people of faith. And that leads us to a new paradigm for peace. In other words, rather than demonizing the other, rather than engaging in a confrontation with the other, St. Francis and the Sultan were able to listen to one another and to see one another for who they truly were, in spite of the war and the violence going on around them. This story tells us if you simply allow an individual to tell you who they are and what they stand for, it could diffuse a whole situation very quickly.
Right now, what you're about to see is a short 30-second clip from the film The Sultan and the Saint.
One of them is a young man named Francis from a small Italian town called Assisi.
As a young man, Francis is what we might call a bon vivant, a man around town. His social activities are hanging out with his friends, probably going around Assisi, making a little...
With SBU-TV, I'm Robert Barbieri.
The movie aired this past Monday on PBS. You can still watch it by logging on to pbs.org or YouTube.
Good news, bargain shoppers. We're learning the anticipated Marshall's department store will open in Olean at the end of April. That's according to a construction worker we talked with at the site. The Marshalls will replace the old Kmart located along West State Street near the Aldi supermarket. The entire Plaza store could get a whole new makeover. We're not confirmed what other shops could open. We're working with contact higher-ups for Marshalls for more information. Stay with us.
And remember this Sunday to turn your clocks forward for daylight saving time. Thanks for joining us on this brisk morning. We'll see you next Friday at 10 a.m. For SBU TV, I'm Emily Weber.
And I'm Erin Lanahan. Have a safe weekend and go Bonnies!